Thank you for being here and listening. Thank you to Leslie and Eve for inviting me to come and have this talk. We are going to be talking today about writing productivity. Um, so, first of all, who am I? Most of you probably don't know me. My name is Jayce Carter. I am an erotic romance author. I have, I think, around 30 books out. I've been writing full time for around 4 years. I am traditionally published, and I've been with the same publisher the whole time. So I really like working with them and everything like that. Um, my history as a writer, like most of us probably, I started out writing when I was young. So I started, as a teenager. I would carry around my notebooks with me everywhere. I'd write. And the funny thing is, despite how much passion I had for it, I really never thought about writing as a career. So it never even occurred to me that it was something that I could choose. So I spent my time thinking about all kinds of other things I could do for a living. It wasn't until I started working as a bookseller at Borders, actually, that I started to think, you know what? I actually could do this as a living. Now that was, shoot, I think I was about 20 when I worked there, and it would take over a decade before it really came together and I did anything with that. And that kind of takes us into my history being neurodivergent because I worked really hard, but I never finished anything. I would kind of go from one project to another, things like that, and I didn't know at the time that I had ADHD. Like a lot of girls, I was undiagnosed because they just really didn't diagnose it back then, especially for girls, and especially for people who have the inattentive type. If they're not hyperactive, they just don't see it. So I was in my early 30s when I was finally diagnosed. At that point, I was able to look at it and realize that there was a reason that I wasn't completing things. There was a reason that I wasn't finishing the work, why I was struggling so hard. And it was finding out that I had ADHD that really led me to want to learn about how my brain worked, about how I could be productive. And that came about because I stopped comparing myself to everyone else. I stopped trying to do things the way everyone else seemed to do it because I couldn't figure out why they seemed to be able to manage and I struggled. So once I was able to be diagnosed, once I was able to learn more, I really looked into how to be productive. What are some options? What are some ways, especially for neurodivergent people, to do the things that I wanted to do? And that's really become kind of a passion for me as far as productivity goes. I often release somewhere between 9 and 12 books a year. So I'm used to being prolific, but it took a long time to figure out what worked for me, for to figure out why certain things worked and other ones didn't. And that kind of leads us into the big warning that I want to put on this, which is everything that I'm going to talk about today, it's all individual. No two people are alike. And even though sometimes people like to pretend like everyone with ADHD, everyone who is autistic is, a monolith, that's not the way it works. It doesn't even work like that with neurotypical people. We are all different and we live different lives and things work differently. So there is no one perfect way. There's no one specific thing that's going to work for everybody. And you have to remember that as you're looking through this, I may give a suggestion and you may look at me and go, yeah, there is no way in hell I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to work. And that's perfectly okay. Just because something works for me, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It's always a good idea to give things a try to kind of see, but we live very different lives. I am fortunate enough that my kids are older, so I don't have young ones running around. I am able to work for, 8 hours a day if that's what I need to do. Other people who are working full time at other careers, those things aren't possible based on, just the health or anything that anybody has. It changes what they're able to do. So anything that gets suggested, you know, take what is useful to you, take what sounds good to you, and feel free to throw away anything else. There is no one perfect way to do this. And I always laugh because, one of my big mentors as I was learning to write would always say just very proudly about how he had been writing for 20 years and he had never missed a day. He wrote 1,000 words no matter what happened. And I had thought that that was so cool at the time. I was like, that's what it means to be a professional. And it took a long time for me to realize that that's not the case. He talked about missing, well, not missing, but he talked about writing despite, the death of family members or the birth of his children. And that's kind of what reminded me that there is no one way. Just because someone else doesn't do it that way doesn't make them less of a writer. So for sure, you have to take all of it and apply it to your own life and see what works and what doesn't for you. And none of it makes you more of a writer or less of a writer. Also, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in there. I'm probably gonna see them at the end, but if I see anything and I can address it at the moment, I will. So, okay, the first part then is setting goals. And I'm someone who thinks that setting goals is really important. I feel like if you don't know where you want to go, the odds of you ever getting there are very slim. And if you do get there, it's probably going to be a lot harder and take a lot longer than it needed to. So I think that knowing what you want is really important. And further than that, you need to know not just what you want, but really why you want it. And there's a reason that that is so important. It's really easy for me to sit here and say, I want to write a book. I want to lose weight. I want to watch less TV. There are all kinds of things that we can decide are goals or things that we want. But then as soon as, the bed is really warm at 5 a.m. and I don't want to get out of bed, suddenly writing a book doesn't seem that important to me anymore. As soon as my husband brings home some chocolate, suddenly losing weight, not vital. And that's the reason why I think it's so important to not only look at what you want to do, but why. When you get down into that, into the reason behind it, it gives you so much more motivation for sticking with it when it's hard, because it will be hard. It doesn't matter how much you love writing. There are days where I wake up and I'm just like, fuck this. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. I don't like these characters. If I have to write just one more vampire orgy, I'm throwing my whole computer out the window. I'm done. I'm done. And there are days like that for everybody. It doesn't matter how much you love it. And knowing your why, knowing why you want to do it is going to help you push through some of those times. It's going to help you go, you know what? Yeah, maybe today I'm not feeling the vampire orgy, but I know that where I want to end up means I'm going to need to do this. So I think really sitting down and evaluating why you're doing it helps give you that motivation. Now, the next thing for setting goals that's so important, and I know I am guilty of being bad at this, which is you have to be realistic and honest with yourself. I can look at it and go, can I write 14,000 words in a day? Yes, I can. I have. Can I do that every day consistently? Hell no. There's no way that I can do that. Nobody really probably can. And I think it's important to be realistic about what you can actually do. By setting goals that are actually attainable, you're going to be way happier than if you're constantly falling short of your goals. And that doesn't just mean your word count. It means being realistic that if you have a full time job, you still have to sleep. You still have to feed yourself. There are still things that you have to do outside of that. You cannot schedule every second of your day and expect that you're not going to burn out. So I think a really important part when you're setting your goals has to do with recognizing what is actually achievable for you long term so that you don't burn out, so that you don't end up tired of it all. And I know it's been mentioned before, but another important part of setting your goals is to not compare yourself to anybody else. There are going to be writers who write faster than you. There are going to be writers who write slower than you, and it's going to happen no matter what. I tend to be someone who writes very quickly. But there are days where I can't. There are days where I get 200 words and I'm like, yeah, no, that's all my brain is up for today. It doesn't want to do this anymore. And that's going to happen no matter what. And you have to remember that each person, you're only seeing a tiny snapshot of reality for them. So you might see that, oh, they're getting a lot of word count, but you may not see all of the other things that they struggle with. So there's just so much that goes into it that I think often we can compare ourselves too much. We can just see this person wrote 5,000 words a day. That means I should be able to do that. And we just can't compare ourselves like that. And as soon as you do, you're going to find yourself always failing. Like you're always going to fall short because it's just reality. There's going to be things that you do better and things that other people do better than you. And there are going to be areas where there's just no reason to worry about it. Just focus on what you can do. And that's all you really need to do. Only compete with yourself. Then, along the same lines for setting goals, is you need to be aware that you're going to have to readjust those goals. It's just the reality. It's the way it works. You're going to have to change some of the time. Maybe your kids get sick or your husband, my husband started working from home. And let me tell you, that was a whole new experience. I suddenly had, someone in my space, in the house all the time. I married him for better or worse, not for lunch. We had to reevaluate at that point how stuff was going to work. And that's not a failure. It's about recognizing that life changes, that what you thought was working for a while may not work forever. So I think it's important to continuously really go back, look at your why, look at your goals, and then see, are they working for you right now? And you may find that some of the time you suddenly need, you go, I'm hitting my goals every day. I want to increase those goals. Or you may realize that you've taken on a new role. Maybe you decided to, join the PTA or something, and now you have less time. So be ready to readjust those and know that that's just a part of life. That's not a failure in any way. All right. So the next part you're probably going to hate because I think every single person has said this before, but it's important. We're going to discuss the stuff before you actually sit down to write. And the first one is health. I mean, I can sit here and tell you that you probably need to drink more water and sleep more, but you know these things. They're still important to mention that basically, if your body is struggling for whatever reason, it's going to affect how well you can focus, So, to the best of your abilities, try and drink water, try and, move around a little bit, eat, take your meds, whatever it is you need to do, because the more you take care of your physical body, the better you're going to be able to focus, the better you're going to be able to sit down and put your time and attention into it, and the less likely you're going to get sick. And I know all of these are really rough. I'm someone with really bad insomnia. I think last night I got about 4.5 hours of sleep. My Fitbit does not like me. It's always on my case about it. But, you just have to do the best you can. And the next part is going to be your work environment. Now, this is This is a hard one. I know we all have an ideal environment where we would like to work, and that's not always possible. As I said, I have a husband who is home all the time. And during the summer, I have two children who are home all the time. Then I have a 120-pound German Shepherd land shark. And those things, they all distract me. However, I can do what I can, and that's going to be individual because some people need quiet. That's me. I need quiet when I'm working, I need a lack of distractions, all of that. But there are other people. My sister, when she works, she loves to be at a coffee shop. She wants to see people moving around, she wants the action, and that's going to really depend on each person and what you like. So you want to try and make your environment as conducive to work as it can be for you. For me, the noise canceling headphones are huge. And when I was working in the center of the house, they created a visual barrier for people so that, my husband didn't bother me. Since then, we built a office for me actually in the backyard. I did it out here because now my children actually have to exit the house to get to my office, which is a wonderful barrier because teenagers are lazy. They're not coming out here unless like the house is on fire. So for me, that works really well, and I like the quiet. I like all of that, but it really just depends on what works for you and what you prefer. I also think that planning and scheduling is very important. It's really easy to say that you want to write a certain amount of words, but time passes quickly. And what I would do before is even if I had a goal, if I didn't look at my day and figure out when I could put that time in, it likely wasn't going to happen. The hours would pass, and then before I knew it, the day would be over, and I never did it. So for me, I think that trying to actually look at your day and figure out when you can get that time in is important. And there was a long time where I didn't have a good space. I wrote my first book standing in front of my washing machine with my, laptop open on it with, two toddlers running around my feet. So that's kind of the way that it can work. And what I found was that being able to look ahead and go, even if it's just 5 minutes, know when you're going to be able to work. When my kids were first in school, I would often bring my laptop and I would sit in the car during pickup time. And anyone who's had to pick up their kids from an elementary school knows that is an ordeal. That can take an hour just to get the kids and get back home. So I'd sit there and I'd write while I was sitting in the car waiting. So it didn't have to be a special place to do it, but just knowing when I was going to be able to do it made all the difference. And I think before you sit down, knowing what you're going to work on is important as well. Otherwise, we get that dreaded sitting and just staring at a blank document. We don't know what we're doing. It's not really an effective use of time. So I think even if you just take 1 or 2 minutes before you actually start working to go, I'm going to be working on this book. I'm going to review the scene just before so I know what it is that I'm planning on doing. Doing all of that just sets you up so that when you actually start working, you're focused specifically on the work. You're not distracted by everything else around. Now, for actually writing, I am a big fan of using routines. And it's a hard thing because for a lot of neurodivergent people, we both love and hate routines. And I am definitely in that. I absolutely love routines, but the ADHD part of my brain is like, no, 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 this is boring now. I don't like it anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, even if I know it makes my life so much better. And there's a reason why routines work so well. There's actually a couple of them. One of the big reasons is we can struggle with executive function. We can struggle with making ourselves do things. And worse, I know I can get very overwhelmed if there's too many steps. And the more stressed I am, the more stressful those steps can be. The idea of a routine is instead of going, I have to do A, B, C, D, and E things, you go, I have one routine and it's built in with all of those steps. As an example, when I used to go climbing, it was sometimes hard to get myself to go and do it because in my brain I thought, well, I need to get my specific water bottle, then I need to find my harness, then I need to get my shoes, I need to put the chalk in the bag, then I need to get everything into the car, then I need to get to the place, and all of those individual steps just overwhelmed me. They felt like too much, and then I went, no, no, I'm not doing anything now. The idea of a routine was I was able to actually basically pack those steps together so that it was one after another and automated. I only needed to use my executive function. I only had to use my, self-discipline one time, which was to start the routine. The rest of the steps ended up just following one after another. And there's another important reason why routines work so well. And we see a lot of it, but I find we think of it more in terms of the negative, which is, for example, my daughter was born very early. She spent the first 2 months of her life in the NICU. She was there at the hospital. I couldn't take her home. And I would have to drive down this very specific street to get to the hospital. And I drove down that street, multiple times a day, every day for 2 months. And every day there was the same feeling in me, which was this feeling of anxiety and fear as I was going. And to this day, despite it being 13 years later, I have that same feeling. Every time I start down that road, my brain remembers when I went before. And I start feeling panicked and I start feeling, nervous and upset. And that is very normal. And what I have found with routines is that we can train our brain the same way, but in a positive way. I have trouble, changing tasks from one to another. But what a strict routine does is it tells my brain, come on, brain, you know what we're doing. We're getting ready and we're going to do this. So my brain knows all of a sudden, hey, when I do this and then this and then this, oh, I see, we're going to write now. Okay, we're good. It has fewer temper tantrums because it knows what we're going to be doing. It's ready for it. It's prepared. It knows every time that we do this, this is what happens. And I find that it is so helpful in being able to sit and work because it's like my brain just already knows. It doesn't fight it. It knows this is just the way it works. So, for specifics, my personal routine, I am a morning person. I know everybody hates morning people. I hate morning people. I don't want other people to talk to me in the morning, but I am still a morning person. So I actually get up at 5 a.m. so that my house is quiet, so nobody's awake yet. I can have my coffee. I can do everything I want to do. And what I do is I get up, I make my coffee, I put on my noise canceling headphones, I sit down, I review my schedule, my plan for the day, what I'm going to be working on. Then I review what it was I wrote the last time so I know where I am and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember what everyone's doing. I remember who has pants on and who doesn't, which when you're an erotica author is an important thing to remember. I put on my writing music that I always listen to. Then I sit down to write. And by doing these specific steps, my brain goes along with me and it's like, okay, cool, we're going to write. We're fine. Like we've done this, we know this is good. And I'm able then to kind of slide right into that work mode. I don't struggle with it because my brain and my body are used to it. It's just the way we do it. Now, those are the things that I use, but there are a lot of other things you can add into your routine based on however you like to do it. And I've done some of these, other ones, are just not for me. But there's a lot of people who like to start by reading before they actually get to work. You can go for a walk, do yoga. I'm actually a big fan of taking a few minutes to do meditation before you start. I personally love my tarot cards, so I will, there's a long time where that was part of my routine that I did before I started. All kinds of different music. There are some people who just, like, for me, I have very specific music that I put on almost all the time, or I'll use brown noise, things like that. Some people like to have different playlists for mood or for whatever the type of work they're working on that day is. All of those can really be beneficial. I like actually lighting my candles, and scent can be a huge thing as well. If there's a specific scent that you really like, that can help trigger that part of your brain to go, right, when I smell that, we're writing. That's what we're doing. And that can help. Specific foods or drinks. I'm usually a big fan of just plain old coffee, but whatever it is that you like, all of that kind of just goes together to really help. And absolutely, any of those sounds can really help. And I personally can't listen to any music that has lyrics in it. I've tried, and somehow those lyrics end up somewhere in my manuscript, and then my editor's really mad. She's like, "What does this sentence even mean? It's like halfway through you started writing lyrics." And I don't know. It just happens. So for me, I can't have lyrics, but other people I know absolutely love that. So it really just depends on what you like. Now, I guess the most important part of the productivity process, which is actually writing. Um, for me, I am a huge fan of writing sprints, and having ADHD, I really prefer shorter sprints for me personal. Other people like longer ones, and even the length of the sprint really depends on my mood. First of all, for those who don't know, what a writing sprint is, it's basically a short period of time where you are supposed to focus intensely, ignore everything else, and write as much as you can within that period of time. A very common, probably one of the most popular ways is the Pomodoro method, which is you do 25 minutes of work, 5-minute break. You do, I think it's 4 blocks of those, and then you get a 15-minute break. That works really well for a lot of people. I've done it before, but I find that it depends. 25 minutes is great if I've slept, I'm properly medicated, everything's good. 25 minutes I can usually do. But my first sprint, I often do 10 minutes. And a lot of times I find I'm more productive in 10 minutes than I am in 20. And there's a reason. If you're going to sit there and I know that I have, let's say, 8 hours, let's say I know I'm working for 8 hours today. It is so easy to say, well, let me check my email real quick because I'm going to be doing this for a while. And the idea with sprints is instead they take it down to a small, feasible amount of time and say, hey, focus for 10 minutes. You can do this for 10 minutes. Ignore the rest of the world. Don't do anything else. And my brain can go, you know what? I can focus for 10 minutes. I can do this one thing and ignore everything else for 10 minutes. So that is kind of the way that sprints work, and they help out so much because you're able to focus for that amount of time, which is why I like shorter ones, but you can find kind of the length that works well for you. You can do them in a lot of different ways. I actually have just a basic little, a little timer that rotates, and I've used that a lot of times to put it on the specific time that I want. However, more recently, I started using a website. It's Word Sprints. It's done by Dabble. I think it's wordsprints.org is the name of it. And I really love doing that. You can do both group and private sprints. So just you set the amount of time, it keeps track of the words. It actually holds on to your words for, I think it's 24 hours locally. So even one time, I don't know what I was doing. And I closed the window and I had a full on heart attack for all my missing words. I was able to go back because it saves it for 24 hours. So I really like that program. You can schedule sprints with other people, you can make them public. And it kind of goes to the next one, which is writing with others. I really like doing the group sprints. Being able to see the word count of the entire room, I find very motivating. Even if I'm just a small part of it, seeing everybody work just kind of gives me that little bit of oomph. It makes me go, oh, okay, cool. We're all doing this. We're all suffering together. And I mean, who wants to suffer alone? So I like doing them together, but you don't have to. You can, keep track of them yourself because that's another big thing is I usually use a bullet journal, but you can do it however you want. And actually right behind me, I have my whiteboard, which I write the amount of words I write during each sprint. And keeping track of that helps me go back and see it later and see the progress that I'm making. And having to write it down is a level of accountability as well. If I did a sprint where I decided that, you know, I wanted to go and I don't know, have a random conversation about a dinosaur erotica, for example, as we do. Um, I'm held responsible for what I did or did not complete, even if it's just to myself, even if it's just writing it down. And I find that that helps me stay focused a lot. And that also goes along with just, in a Discord channel that I'm in, I will often write my sprint. So, what the sprint number was, and then what I wrote during that time. And it's not about comparing yourself with anyone else. It's not about showing, how much you did or didn't do. But by writing it down, it's being accountable. It's me saying, this is what I did. And I just find that that helps a lot with being able to keep going. And you have built in breaks. And I am definitely guilty of trying to work through those breaks. Um, don't do that. Like, I know with hyper focus, it's so easy to fall into it. But the problem is that those breaks tend to be really good for you. I think it's more important that if you find that your amount of time for writing is 45 minutes, it's way better to take your 45-minute writing and then take your break instead of doing sprint after sprint without taking that break. You need water, you need to move your limbs and your joints a little bit. You need, a moment to let your eyes kind of rest. All of that is important. And I am as guilty as anyone of being like, oh no, I'll just start the next sprint right away. But I really suggest you try and take those breaks when you can because you really do need them. Now, this is a hard one. I honestly think writers are really too hard on themselves. I hear them constantly putting themselves down for not achieving what they think they should have. They didn't write enough. They didn't get the book finished quickly enough. Everything. And the reality is, we need to be kinder to ourselves. When I look back on my life, all the times I've been hard on myself, all the times I've berated myself for what I saw as my own shortcomings, that never got me to do better. It never put me in a better place. If anything, it just created this vicious cycle where I didn't complete things. Then I was mad and told myself I was terrible for not completing things. And then I had even less motivation to complete anything else. And it just got worse and worse. What I learned is that beating up on myself is not the way to help. It just isn't. Instead of that, I think trying to reward yourself goes a long way. I admit it, I'm a little kid. I love stickers. We have a joke around our house because my husband actually has stickers. We call them good girl stickers, and he gives them to me when I do good things. It sounds horrible. It probably is. I don't care. I have a whole book full of my good girl stickers. And ideas like that are so simple, but they work. They're little bits of acknowledgement to reward even small things. Too often really we don't acknowledge how much of our work are little things, It's writing even just a little bit. It's getting up and doing the one thing you really didn't want to do. It's writing that vampire orgy when you didn't want to. You should really celebrate those things. It doesn't have to be a huge reward. It can be a sticker. It can be a special drink you can like. It's anything. And those really make you feel better and more likely to repeat that behavior. So feel free to actually celebrate the things that you do well instead of harping on the things you don't think you're doing well. And yeah, I laugh at the stickers because I love the stickers. I will even be like, "Did I earn a sticker today?" And then I'll try and go over all the reasons I think I should get a sticker. And they're adorable. We have like kitty cat stickers, everything. Um, and the reality is, as much as we want to celebrate all the times we do well, there are definitely times that we fall short. It is reality. Even the biggest author, the most prolific, is going to have times where they set a goal and they don't meet it. It's reality. It doesn't matter how good you are, how much you try. There are things that are out of your control. So even if you do everything 100% right, that's not going to change the fact that something outside, we have power outages here all the time. I am in Southern California. And when there's a risk of a wildfire, they just shut off all of our power. So our power goes out a lot. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And there are things like that that can happen that are going to throw you off. You can't help it. There are days where you just don't feel like it, where you get sick, where, you know, your kids are terrible. There's all kinds of reasons that it's going to change. And you have to go into it knowing that that's going to happen and just readjusting. There are days where I think I'm going to get a ton of work done. And it just does not happen. I get a call from the school that my son decided to stand in water puddles and get drenched, and I need to bring clothing to him now so that, he's not soaking wet. And it's going to happen. Go into it expecting it. Build yourself in goals that allow you to fail a little bit, that allow you to fall short, to have a life, and know that you're going to have to reevaluate, you're going to have to change things. And no matter what you do, you're just not going to be on every day. I think it's also really important that you find a community. Writing is really isolating. It is lonely. We spend all day arguing with voices in our heads, and non-writers don't get it. It's just I've realized this. I've tried to talk to them and explain things about what I do, and they look at me like I'm nuts. There's just no good way to explain it to them when I'm having a problem with a character, and they're like, "Well, just make them do this." And I'm like, "That's not how this works, but thank you." So I think finding that community is important. Having people that you can talk to, and it doesn't have to be in real life. There are so many options. You have all kinds of online communities now. You have local writers guilds, you have critique groups, all kinds of things like that. But having that outlet, that support, those people cheering you on, it makes a huge difference on those days when you're sick of it, when you don't want to do this, when your editor's telling you the same thing for the 50 millionth time, and you're like, "I don't care. I don't want to do this. I don't like this. And I don't really like you right now." Having that community makes you feel like you have people at your back. You have people who understand you, who you can vent to, and who are going to support you, and they help to push you forward. And it just kind of resolves some of that isolation so that you're not spending all of your time alone, with very difficult, unsavory characters for a lot of us. We don't exactly create some of the most well adjusted people we're spending time with. And I think that at the end of the day, when it gets really hard, that's why we kind of started with finding your why, finding why you do something, thinking about it, and knowing, you want to write because you want to entertain people, you want to do this, you're passionate about it. And I think reviewing that why can give you that bit of motivation. It reminds you why you're doing what you're doing. You may need a break, but that why is what brings you back. That why is what gets you up to do it, even when you don't want to. And those are that's about it. That's all the main points. I kind of tried to keep an eye on any questions, uh, anything that I missed. A lot of them are good ideas, that have been here, other websites you can use, all of that. It's really a lot of it is just creating your own personal routine, figuring out how it works for you. I am going to be around the conference all weekend. Feel free to reach out. You can email me, Jayce Carter at jaycecarter.com. That's an easy one to remember. So if you have any questions or anything like that, if you just want to write me to tell me that my ideas will not work, feel free. I am not an expert. So, I'd love to talk to anyone who wants to. And thank you for coming and listening to me ramble for 45 minutes. And that's about it. Thank you and have a good rest of your conference.